All right, guys, we are going to get things going. Find a seat if you like. Get in close. Thank you all for coming out. This is the first Fireside Chat of 2019. I'm really stoked to have my friend Troy Eckert here joining us. This place is called The Dock. It's a collaborative workspace, so that's where you're visiting. Little housekeeping for you. Men's restrooms in the back, women's over to that side, and help yourself to any of the snacks or anything in the fridge, beer, wine, sodas, or anything. Make yourself at home. Mi casa, su casa. You know, I started these Fireside Chats because there were some really amazing people that I've come across over the last 30 years, and I felt that their voices weren't being recognized and heard, and I think they had some amazing insights and experience and knowledge that needed to be shared. So, you know, we tested out the first Fireside Chat in October. We brought in my friend Greg Witt, who wrote a book about Gen Z, and it went really well, and we've kind of fine-tuned everything. But now the idea is we're going to be bringing people in once a month. So there'll be some really unique people coming in that you might not hear about. They might be from the action sports industry or somewhere else, but I guarantee there will be some exciting conversations and some key things to learn and a little bit of networking as well. So thanks to everybody for coming out and supporting us. You know, this is a really interesting experience for me in that I'm a bit of a nerd when it comes to marketing and branding and learning from other people. So, you know, even though I'm up here, I'm probably equally as excited as some of you are to sit with Troy, even though he and I have been friends for more than 30 years. But it's been great seeing his trajectory, you know, from a pro surfer to ditching all of that and going to work for this company who knows where it could have gone, but it obviously did well, and the insights and the experience and everything that he's accumulated along the way, I'm really excited to hear personally. And, you know, my story with Volcom starts back in the early 90s, and even earlier than that, actually, in the 80s. But I went to school down in Point Loma, and I was college roommates with a guy named Tucker Hall, and Tucker was one of the co-founders with Richard Wolcott. So Tucker and Wooly founded Volcom, and I remember when they were getting going with this whole idea, and I had just bought a surf shop, so we were talking about maybe carrying their clothes and everything too, and I got to meet Troy at that time, and we were one of the first 3 shops to carry Volcom. So, you know, seeing that brand go from, you know, Wooly and Tucker, you know, printing stuff in their garage, being all sweaty and dirty, running up to our store to stock us up, us writing a check, and then them going out and buying more products so they could sell more. Just really cool story. But, you know, we had a lot of fun along the way. Volcom really disrupted the surf industry. And that's what I love about this brand, is that before Volcom came along, if you were involved in surf, skate, or snow, you stayed in your lane. You know, you were a surfer, or you were a skateboarder, or you were a snowboarder, and that's what you did. But Volcom came around and said, you know, that does not apply to us, and we don't think that kids want to be restricted to being defined as a surfer or a skateboarder or a snowboarder. And Volcom gave license to young people all around to say that you can surf, you can skate, you can snowboard, but they also gave them this creative freedom of, you know, allowing them to, you know, expose themselves to art and creativity and film and music and everything. And that had not been done by any brand. So they really broke ground, and Troy was the reason for all of that stuff going on. So that's why we're here, to hear about that story, how Troy thought about it, and so that's what we're gonna do. So let's kick things off. This is Troy Eckert, good friend of mine, and I'm so stoked to have him. So let's give him a quick round of applause for joining us.
Thank you, Vipe.
So Troy, you know, I'm gonna divert just for a quick second. A little birdie told me that you've been getting into foil surfing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Tell me about that. Is that fun?
Yeah, it's kind of a new love for me actually, because when the waves are small, it's the go-to. You know, you don't need waves for it, so it's just like flying on the ocean, and it's an experience I've never had before. It's similar to snowboarding in a way, because, you know, we're all kind of you know, everybody can go on the same wave and it's like fun, just like when you're going down a mountain or riding powder or something like that. So I'm super hooked on foiling. Yeah, it's really fun.
Good. Well, I'm glad to hear that the older that you've gotten, you haven't lost that spirit of adventure and that stoke that only Groms know. You've kept that on. So cool. Yeah. So look, let's talk about the early days. Okay, here you are. You're a pro surfer. Okay, and looking like you're going to have a promising career. Yeah. And all of a sudden, you know, life gives you a bit of a diversion. Yeah. What's going on there? How was that?
Yeah. Well, I was 18 years old at the time when, well, Wooly, if I back up a little bit, Wooly was my team manager at Quicksilver, and I was surfing for Quicksilver at the time. Wooly was is the co-founder of Volcom with Tucker Hall. So he quit. Tucker got fired. So those guys went on this like 6-month like sabbatical snowboard, skateboard kind of journey. They went up to Tahoe. They went all over the place. They came back, and Wooly just approached me. He's like, "Hey, I'm starting a company. It's called Volcom, and do you want to be a part of it?" And I was 18. I think I just graduated high school, and I was making like $200 a month from Quicksilver, and it was like, okay, there's potential to go the pro surf route with Quicksilver, and who knows where that's going to take me. Same thing on the other side with Volcom. It's like I had no, I mean, it was nothing. There were stickers. That was all it was. So I don't know why, but I love Wooly. Like Wooly was my team manager, and I just like resonated with him so much that I just took the leap of faith and just went for it. And yeah, that was the very, very, very beginning.
Yeah, so what was going through your mind? I mean, it's like most people want to be pro surfers. They would probably not want to give that up. And here you're going from dawn patrol to 9 to 5.
Honestly, it's so funny because I probably did it because it's what my dad didn't want me to do. He's like, "You're super stupid to leave this Quicksilver thing. You could be on course as a pro surfer." So of course, being 18 years old, I'm going to do exactly what Dad doesn't want me to do. So that was probably one thing, and the other was, I think it was just Wooly and just his energy and his vibe, and I had a lot of faith in him, and I just kind of trusted my decision at the time. And I was so young, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. Truly, like I didn't know. No idea, but something pulled me in that direction. Yeah. Yeah,
and so how did you come up with all these ideas of surf and skate and snow? You obviously didn't have any experience in that, you know, or schooling, but you obviously had a passion for it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, right around that time is when snowboarding was kind of getting going, kind of with your shop and stuff, and I just got right into that with those guys too, with Tucker and Wooly, because those guys, that's all they did at that time was snowboard. So we would go up to Bear and Mammoth and just local mountains and whatnot, and I fully fell in love with it. And then I knew Chet Thomas, who his brother RT is also, he's actually still at Volcom, he does all the films. But Chet was a professional skateboarder for Quicksilver at the time, and we were, you know, talking about trying to get somebody on board, and then I went and got Chet on the team. So that was sort of the beginning of the skateboard side of things too. And then Wooly knew Terrier, and he pulled him in somehow, which Terrier at the time was like a rock star. Yeah. And he got him in, and you know, we weren't paying these guys anything at the time. It was just like they loved the idea of what we were doing with the surf, skate, snow thing. And yeah, in the beginning, I was kind of like, is this gonna work? Because like what you mentioned before, there's skaters, there's surfers, there's snowboarders, and everybody's very sort of in that lane. And especially for the skate side, that was the side that I was a little bit concerned with, of like, you know, at that time they were like F surfing, F snowboarding as well. But somehow, like, I don't know why, but they just gravitated towards it. And then we were able to sort of branch off and make these legitimate programs for each sport. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're right. It's like you guys made each of those sports legitimate under Volcom, and I think that would have been hard anywhere else. And I saw the team that you guys were putting together. I mean, it was like stellar. Nobody could put a candle to it. It was amazing. And how you were getting these guys by paying them so little. How did the art and music and film play into it? Because that was another area that none of the other brands were even thinking about.
Yeah, well, Wooly, I mean, he's an incredible filmmaker. He did Kelly Slater Black and White at Quicksilver. He did, you know, Gen X, and he had his hands on a couple other films there as well. So he had that coming into Volcom with a vision of creating films for the brand. And I was an innocent bystander, and he just like, here's a camera, like, let's go on a trip and just see if you can like operate this thing. So I, by default, was becoming like the filmer along with Wooly. So we were filming most of those films in the beginning, you know, early days. And so that's sort of how the film thing worked out. And just in retrospect, looking back, I mean, in my perspective, those films defined the brand, you know, like really did. And whenever I talk to people, they always go back to Magnaplasm, The Garden, like all the different films that we created with obviously a bunch of amazing filmmakers and whatnot along the way. You know, that's the film side. The music side was just, I mean, it was like Nirvana, Pearl Jam. It was the full grunge. That was like grunge at its peak right then, right?
Yeah.
So it was just like, we were just consumed with like that kind of music, and it just kind of organically worked its way into the brand. And same with the art too. It's just, everything was so organic. The only things that were really like methodically really planned out was we're going to be a surf, skate, snow brand. And then those other kind of two things just kind of fell alongside it, and it just kind of worked in this big package.
Yeah, well, it worked out. I mean, from the outside looking in, it was amazing to see all these things come together. There was so much creativity around the film and, you know, or the films that you guys were making. I mean, when we had our shop, they would blow through the stores, and then the music component, selling CDs out of surf shops and everything, just incredible. But it's also like what inspired us, and I mean, you know this too, because you were a winner of the event, but we started a surf and snowboard contest at our shop. So one day you surfed, the next day you snowboarded, and in between, we sandwiched in music. So as a retail store, we were feeling what Volcom was putting out, going, you know, this is what we're into as well. And we embraced what you guys were doing. And here, you know, our little surf and snowboard contest with music went on to inspire the Warped Tour and the X Games. But you can see, I mean, like Troy competed in it. I mean, it's like you guys wouldn't miss anything. All your athletes want to be part of it.
Oh yeah, that was a huge thing for me personally, because I mean, I did like 4 of them, and I was lucky enough to win a few of them. And Vipe was giving away it was like $8,500 for the overall. And back in the early 90s, for a shop to be doing something like that was insane. And I bought my first truck from the prize money from your contest. So yeah, thanks Vipe. Yeah,
oh man, I look back on it and go, gosh, it's like we were giving a lot of prize money away. But you know, I felt that athletes were so important to the culture, and they were not getting what they deserved with all these other contests, and the other contests were raking in dough from sponsors and just shelling out so little. And you know, we just wanted to embrace that and honor all the athletes. But it was so much fun having bands that you guys worked at. I mean, we had Pennywise, Blink-182, Unwritten Law before they got popular, playing our stage before they went on anywhere. So we were definitely feeling the vibe. So they opened up the door for our retail store to thrive.
Yeah.
When did you realize that you had a tiger by the tail with Volcom?
Oh gosh.
Is there a moment where you're just like, oh my God, this thing?
You know, probably the biggest moment for me where I realized that we had something going on was the Alive We Ride premiere, and it was in our parking lot of the second building that we had, and it was just packed. Like, people were waiting for us to show this film, and when we popped it in, and just the excitement and the energy, that was the moment I'm like, holy shit, like this could be something incredible. And that was kind of, for me, it was a defining moment for me, for sure. But I mean, other than that, just, you know, working a ton. We were working, I mean, I lived directly next door in an apartment building with like 5 of my friends, and I'd literally just like wander over to Volcom and work from 8 in the morning till like 10 o'clock at night. And we had a skate ramp, we had music equipment, so we would just jam and skate and just ship and, you know, production, and didn't matter what the hell we were doing. Like, I was doing all kinds of stuff in the beginning. It was just like production run, you know, shipping half the day, marketing, call these guys, like, it was just like crazy. You know?
All hands on deck.
All hands on deck.
Grown up daycare.
Completely, yeah.
Oh man.
We need our own daycare actually.
All right, so Volcom's moving along, and I remember the Alive We Ride campaign and everything. I mean, just the film, the athletes, the tour, everything was just bonkers. We got to see it. I mean, our customers were wild and crazy for that campaign as well. So, look, I want to jump into one of the big things that Volcom did, which was the IPO. You know, that was a pretty big deal. You know, what went through your head when you started to hear talk about going public? Because you guys were youth against establishment, and now you guys were kind of teetering on becoming the establishment.
Totally. It was a push-pull for sure, because, I mean, you know, as any company, and, you know, you're faced with these different kind of points in your life cycle of like, are we going to stay private forever? Are we going to do an IPO? Like, are we selling it? Like, what are we doing? So, you know, Richard and his father and sort of a lot of the shareholders, it was kind of in their court at the end of the day of like, hey, let's create some shareholder value, and this is the time to do it. So for me as marketing and being obviously a big part of the company, it was scary, you know, because obviously just what you said, youth against establishment and IPO, it's like more opposite than that. So yeah, but at the end of the day, I was on board. I was just like, hey, if this is what we're doing, like, let's do this. Let's roll up our sleeves and go, you know. And luckily, when we did go public, we actually did a pretty darn good job of preserving that slogan for a while. I mean, we went public in 2005. So, you know, and I left in 2010. So literally my job from 2005 to 2010 was just to, you know, try to manage that ship and keep it flowing to where on the consumer facing side, they don't really know what's going on internally as far as like, you know, it's publicly traded company on Wall Street and whatnot. And I mean, yeah, and everything changed, you know, the accounting side, like I felt so much for our CFO, because it's like all of a sudden the next day it's like hire 20 new people just to, you know, deal with SEC.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of pressure, and I felt it, and with the executive meetings and whatnot, you know, it's all about the bottom line. Now it's all about the money, like return, that's it, nothing else. So, but it was cool because, you know, Wooly had a lot of, he was very passionate and about keeping the core, you know, within those times. So we were able to really do a lot of things that we wanted to do, and we got a ton more money to do it. So then we were able to just like blow it up. And really the IPO was a big move to be able to compete, you know, with the other brands, right? So you got Quicksilver, Billabong, and probably O'Neill. Those are kind of the heavies at that time. And it was, do we kind of stay stagnant here and maybe just kind of fight to get up there, or do we, you know, get a big injection of cash, and then boom, we can instantly kind of hit the ground running, and that's exactly what we did.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely one of the most exciting IPOs to hit the action sports industry, and I think it caught some people by surprise. You know, I think Volcom was kind of like their personal favorite core little brand that they wanted to keep to themselves, but it was time to kind of take on these new opportunities. Were you nervous at all, you know, of what was going on? Because I mean,
yeah, totally. I remember it was a big moment for me. It was so funny. So they do all these, you know, they do the road show, right, and all these different meetings, and they had a meeting with the underwriters of the deal, and it was, I don't even remember what the name of the underwriters were, but I was invited to go to this meeting, and I was totally late, and I like was surfing or something, and I was coming in, and I had super long hair at the time, and I walk into this room, and I swear it's like this like oval table of like 50 suits, and Wooly and Tucker and like whoever else at the head. And as I walk in, I'm just like, I felt like Spicoli with the bagel, just like walk in, just like that. Everybody's just like, you know, looking at me. And it was just right then and there, I was like, holy shit, everything's different from here on out. So yeah, I was totally nervous, you know, like especially as the person in charge of the, you know, the consumer facing side of the brand. It's different when you're on the finance or, you know, I mean, design and sales definitely feel it, but on the marketing side, I think that's kind of the biggest pressure in my opinion.
Yeah, you probably see and feel things first before the sales guys do.
Yeah.
You know, because the retailers are just like, great, you know, more POP, more marketing dollars and all that stuff.
Yeah, well, the kids are the first one to be like, oh, you're a sellout, like, I'm over it, you know, and for us, before the IPO, like, we were leaders, you know, and then all the leaders were following Volcom, so it's like we definitely lost some people, no question, but we did a pretty good job actually. So I feel pretty proud about that.
Yeah, good. Okay, so you guys go public in 2005. Mm-hmm. You're navigating this new relationship with being a public company.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden, 2008 hits and things get a little crazy.
That was heavy.
What's going on at Volcom at that point?
Yeah, well, at that point, Yeah, the whole recession hit, and it was really gnarly. So just a lot of cutting back, a lot of budgets cutting in half, and getting rid of legacy team riders. I mean, it was a really, really tough time. Again, Wooly was he did a really good job, I think, of managing the marketing department, because he knew that was truly the fuel for the brand. So a lot of the cuts, unfortunately, were coming in like as employees and different types of things. I mean, everybody in the whole world obviously got hit, and the action sports definitely took a big hit. So yeah, it was a tough time. It was a tough time for everybody.
Yeah, I remember, a lot of the public companies took a really bad hit. Some of them were paying for it for years.
Yeah.
You guys seem to have come out fairly unscathed, and I think you guys had a successful IPO. You guys got through the recession, and then when did Caring come along?
Yeah, that wasn't until 2011, so I was gone.
Okay, you were gone by then.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. The one thing that we did do, actually, now that I think about it, during that 2008 time was we kind of doubled down on a few things too. Like where all these brands, including Quicksilver, the bigs, were just like pulling back. We actually did some ads on like X Games and did these different kind of like trial things, and they did really well, and we got a lot of notice from it. So that was actually cool to be able to get it from the higher ups of like, hey, let's double down a little bit in this moment of everybody's pulling back. Let's go for it a little bit. So there was a couple things that we got to do that were super exciting during that time.
Yeah, I really like what you say there, because I think sometimes people miss out and they get a little spooked when there's a recession. And I remember, like, I started my surf shop during a recession, and people were calling me crazy to do this. But the day I closed on my shop, and the day after I got the keys, I went and opened up the shop, and I turned on the TV, and we were dropping bombs in Baghdad. It was the start of Operation Desert Storm, and I was just like oblivious to it. But I also look at it and go, everybody else was kind of like pulling back. All the other shops were cutting brands, cutting back on orders, and here we are like, hey, we want to kind of like, fire things up. We're ready to do business. And it paid off for us. We were excited. We had the energy. And when customers came in, they could feel it. And brands were like, everybody else is doom and gloom, and you guys are just like feeling happy-go-lucky. I was young at that time, so I didn't have anything, no wisdom or anything. In hindsight, it was probably like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
But I think that's a smart play for some businesses when there's, some financial headwinds coming at you. It might be a good time to kind of double down where your competitors are pulling back.
Yeah.
So hindsight, 2020, looking back, what do you think? Better to go public, or what do you think? I mean, obviously there was paydays for people.
Yeah, there was paydays, so that was definitely the plus. And then being able to compete was a big plus as well. More infrastructure, all that sort of thing. Yeah, it's a tough one when I look. It's a hard question. It's a really hard question to answer, because it could have potentially preserved the brand for a bit longer with that sort of youth against establishment mentality a bit. And things are different now. Every brand has a life cycle, though, and that's the thing, is you gotta kind of strike while the iron's hot in some fashion. And the IPO was the way that the shareholders decided to go. So me just being like kind of dedicated to the core as always, like sure, I would have loved to have seen it just kind of like cruise along private and just be a rad, private company for a long time, and everybody gets paid well and that sort of thing. So yeah, it's an interesting question, but I don't know if I answered it.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay. Okay, so you were at Volcom for about 20 years.
I was there 20 years, yeah.
Compact all that together, what were the highlights?
Honestly, just the camaraderie, and just the people, all of them, like the team riders, getting all the athletes on board and working with them on different film projects or ad campaigns. And then just building employee teams, and at one point I had probably 40 people under me, like globally.
Yeah.
And I took a lot of pride in building incredible teams and having like the least amount of turnover as possible, and we did that for a long, long time. And honestly, it's the people, the camaraderie, and just the parties are fun, the trade shows are fun, like.
Those trade shows, oh
yeah,
man, if you got,
nuts.
I don't know if anybody's ever been to one of the action sports industry's trade shows, but holy smokes, I mean, Volcom shows up and it's like they bring the party. it's out of control and fun, the energy and you guys had all these crazy themes that you would carry through. It was just really different fun. Yeah. And I think they still do that to a certain degree.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't been to a trade show in a long time, thank God.
Are there any trade shows left? Right? Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's the people. It's the people and the relationships that, you know, I still have to this day, and watching people succeed too. Like really watching people like thrive and succeed and go on to other amazing things, start companies, you know, people getting married. Like there's been so many marriages within my department of just people that I hire, and people get married and have kids, and I'm just like, that's amazing. You know, and I'm friends with those people to this day, you know, so I think that's awesome. Like that's real, that's life, you know.
Yeah, no, you know, and I think that's one thing that I love about the industry is that there's a real sense of culture. You know, I think a lot of these brands really put time and energy in making sure the culture is right, and I know that Volcom did. I mean, every time I went over to the office, it's just like, I mean, you got drenched in this culture. It was just infectious. Yeah. So, okay, so at what point did you start to think that you were ready to step down as EVP? What's one thing, you know, that you were feeling that you were ready to move on?
Yeah, I think it was funny because it was around that time when the recession hit that I was like, this would be a pretty easy time for me just to pull the plug. But at the same time, I had been there for so long, I couldn't stomach doing it because it was just, everything was kind of in turmoil, and I didn't want to leave on that note. So it was my priority to make sure that in the coming years that I had, the infrastructure was just solid, that where I could walk out, someone else can walk in, it's plug and play, ready to go with an amazing team. So, but the reason was, I mean, I had a lot of people that were my employees, and just the different things of just management. You know, it's like I was dealing with management type of things 90% of the time in the last like couple of years that I was working there, and then through also being a public company, all the pressures to grow and that sort of thing. So it kind of got to a point where I was like, you know what, the best years are behind me. I know that for sure with Volcom. So do I just kind of like limp along, like not too super happy and kind of do that? And I just honored my heart, and I was like, it's time for me to go in 2010. So, but I did persevere for about 2 years, and I wasn't like super stoked the whole time, but it was a goal of mine to leave it in good hands. So that was a big priority for me.
Yeah, I can only imagine how hard that is. And you're right. You know, I worked for a public company a while back, and it's difficult. You know, the pressure of, you know, shareholder value, and you know, the pressure. I think the pressure is more on like marketing, because they want you to produce sales with less money, and they always question, why are you spending that money? And you know what we could do with that? And do you really need that head count? And if you're a passionate person, like, you know, guys like you and I are, I mean, we're people, you know, you have athletes and you have people's lives at your control, and you're like, I can't cut these people. You know, I could see that. I could see that. It's tough.
It was always blame marketing. You could always blame marketing for everything. Right? Design, it didn't sell because you didn't market it. Sales, like, you know, it's marketing's fault.
Yeah, but if sales are good, sales wins, right?
Sales wins. Sales always wins.
Yeah, who needs marketing? You know, sales are down, blame marketing. Sales are good, it's the sales guys.
Yeah, there was a lot of that in the end there too, and I'm just like, I'm ready. Ready to start a new chapter. All
right, so 2010, you're out, you pick up, move the family to Kauai. It sounds like the start of a happy ending, but not exactly the case.
True.
You know, walk us through this time period. Was it hard to let go? You know, was this a mic drop moment? I'm out.
You know, well, it was cool because Wooly, we worked on a kind of a new position. We call it a Hawaii Strategic Director. So we moved over to Kauai with my family and 2 young children at the time, and my wife at the time was pregnant with our 3rd daughter. And so literally we moved over, she was 7 months pregnant, and once we settled, we had the baby like right then and there. But honestly, it was hard. It was like, I mean, I'd been in the office for 20 years, and that was my identity, was Volcom. Like everything was Volcom. And so I just needed to decompress for a little bit. So I did a few little projects for the Hawaii thing for about a year, and then I just at that point I was like, you know what, I'm ready to cut the ties completely and just start a whole new chapter in my life. And honestly, I just surfed for a couple years. I was like, I'm just surfing. Like that's all I'm doing right now. I'm just like decompressing. I need a minute, after 20 years. So it was hard. It was an interesting moment. The transition was super interesting.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's hard. I agree. I mean, it's like you go from one thing, and I think pro surfers have this difficulty, or pro athletes. Being a pro athlete is your identity, and then all of a sudden you find yourself sponsorless.
Yep.
And that identity is pulled out from underneath you. Whereas for you, you kind of chose to offload that identity, but I mean, what were some of the toughest things that you went through in that period?
Well, just did I make the right decision? Like I could have stayed, or just all kinds of stuff go through your head, and so it was. But I just knew in my heart. I followed my intuition. I followed my heart, and I just knew it was time for me to do something else in my life. So I just held on to that, and ended up being the right call in the long run. So, but. I mean, overall, it was just tough all around. Just even adapting to like not having to go to the office during the day, and then like, with my wife and my kids, I'm just like, what do I do? Like, it's crazy, after being so chained to the desk for so long. So.
And probably also having a schedule that is filled.
Yeah, it's just like, you're either on the road or you're just in that office, and doing your thing. And then of course there's events, all kinds of events, weekends, and. I mean, you're basically, as marketing, it's 24/7.
Yeah.
It's 24/7. There is no off switch in marketing. So it was always on call, and I just found myself with a lot of time, and I just went surfing.
Yeah, good. Well, it's like I think in some of those instances you can kind of unplug and let yourself go, and all of a sudden it's like you find yourself maybe a couple pounds heavier and, not as active or anything, and obviously you've stayed busy. So now you're getting back into the game.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about, a couple years ago you wanted to get back in the game. You launched Cosm with Derek Sabori.
Yep.
How does one go from the super punk brand mindset to this holistic spiritual concept? Yeah,
well, I mean, I started practicing yoga in like 2006, and it was when I have all kinds of injuries, a lot of broken bones and metal and things, and my doctor Tim Brown, Tim, of course, he basically prescribed it to me, and that's when I started practicing, was for my injuries, and then. Man, I just gravitated towards it in so many different ways. I came for the physical, I left with the mental. And so that was really the beginning of my journey there. And then when I went to Kauai, I got introduced to Ashtanga, which is another type of yoga, and really just got into it. And Terry's a Ashtanga practitioner as well. He would go there a lot too. And it just made me feel really good. It helped my surfing, and I was able to stay somewhat fit, in the moment, and mentally too, it really helped me. So when I moved back here, and obviously during that time I got divorced, and the whole thing fell apart that way too, but we moved back over here, and the yoga really just really grounded me and helped me so much during that time in my life as well. So then I had the bright idea to start a men's yoga clothing line, and hit up Derek, and he was working at Volcom at the time, and basically pulled him out of there and said, let's go do this. And we started it, and it was all great, and just I'm super proud of what we built. But after about 6 months or maybe a year or so, I kind of found myself just a little bit back in the hustle again. I was like, I'm back in product again. Like, what did I just do to myself? And I'm the owner of this company, and we got to go raise funds and do this whole thing. And I kind of just found myself a little bit I wasn't totally stoked, to be totally honest. And so then at that point, this is about a year ago, that I was like, it's time for me to like go on another soul search mission again. And I handed the keys over to Derek, and he's gonna run it, which is amazing. I'm still involved with the brand, so it's in the best hands it could ever be in, and I think it has a lot of potential. But for me, that time was interesting. About a year ago, it was kind of an interesting moment for me. Yeah.
So, you hand over the brand to Derek, and you thought you could kind of get back into that fierce entrepreneurial mindset. Yeah. Didn't happen.
No, it was my ego, like straight up. It was like my ego, like crushed it with Volcom. I can do this again, and just it is difficult, like running a startup, especially a clothing company. And in that space the niche is incredible that we found, and it's sustainable. It's all very eco-friendly, which is really what I believe in as well, and Derek, of course. But again, at the end of the day, it's still a product company building products and marketing them and selling them. And the other thing that was interesting too is when I was at Volcom, during our peak, there was no social media. There was no Facebook, there was no Instagram, There was none of that shit. So straight up, like I left in 2010 and that's when Instagram was born. So everything was print media, all of it. And web, web was just starting to get going and it was Wild West. Nobody knew what the hell was going on. People were charging a bunch of money. It was just, the whole .com burst bubble. And so with this new endeavor, and our idea was to be direct to consumer only to keep the prices low, premium products, sustainable products for a lower price. So with that, you got to have a digital marketing strategy. And I found myself like dealing with all that stuff, and I was totally green. I didn't know how to do any of that stuff. I know how to build a vibe and have a vision, but when it comes down to pulling the levers and doing all this, it's technical stuff. So I found myself there in the back end of the website and stuff. I'm like, I'm not having fun right now. Yeah. Like this isn't my calling right now. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because I look at some of the folks in here and the age that we're all at, and especially an old fart like me. But it's like, it's like I feel so fortunate to have grown up in the analog to the digital side. Where started out still having to write letters and correspond with people, licking a stamp and sending it and waiting for the response. And then, fax machines came out and, it's like, wow, this thing just came through the fax, it was just mind blown. And then pagers and beepers and just all that
cell
stuff.
Phones,
yeah, cell phones and then dot matrix printers. It's like, whoa, what is this? Look at all this stuff.
Yeah.
But you're right, and I kind of found myself in the same boat, trying to keep up with this digital emergence. And then it's like you had e-commerce and all these things. And I saw a lot of brands in our industry struggle
big time.
with that.
Big time.
They did not want to let go of print. And print didn't want to let go of print. They didn't want to embrace this new digital movement that was coming.
Yeah.
And
what was I going to say? Not only that, with the digital thing, with the retailers. Like when all the brands were going direct, it was like the biggest deal. And obviously now it'd be the stupidest. You would never start a brand without being direct first.
Yeah.
So then it was that transition, and everybody was it was just crazy. All the retailers were getting pissed, and we waited a long time. Volcom waited probably like 1 to 2 years, and everybody else had gone direct to consumer, and we waited because we were, we had all these relationships with our retailers. So it was interesting.
Yeah,
was
that was definitely the Wild West. I remember retailers wanting exclusivity. They wanted to be the online exclusive retailer, and that didn't work. And I think the brands were just chomping at the bits to go direct to consumer. And then it finally happened, and I think that was a bitter pill for some in the industry to swallow.
Yeah, for sure.
But so where's the brand stand now? So what's up with Cosm?
Yeah, it's going, it's good. It's in Derek's hands, and we're just, he's running with it, and I'm just sort of advising and still part of the brand. So I just kind of 50,000 foot, tell him what I think and help out. And yeah, it's good. I'm stoked. I think it has it's an incredible niche, like I mentioned before. And like Nike just came out with this whole like men's yoga thing going on. It's like, the thing has amazing potential. So hopefully he takes it under his wing and really goes for it. So
they should have just bought you guys.
Well,
right?
Yeah, not quite yet. We're not big enough yet. So
okay, so Radical Voyage.
Yeah.
That's your new thing.
It's my new thing.
How did that come about, and what's it all about?
Yeah. Well, so kind of around a year ago, with sort of when I was figuring out what I was doing with Cosm, I was like in this moment of just like utter stress. Like I had a relationship that kind of went south. I was feeling a bit depressed at the moment. Like it was a pretty gnarly time for me. To top it off, I found mold in my house, so I got mold poisoning. So I got super sick. So I had like crap health for a long, long time. It took me a long time to figure out what was going on. And so yeah, that was a major like wake up call. I had my like dark night of the soul, probably in the beginning around this time last year. And, it went on for probably 6 or 7 months of just like, what? I don't even know what's going on, going to like neurologists, going to cardiologists, going to, MD, going to whoever. And it was painstaking, and finally I found a naturopath that figured it out. And it's like, okay, test your house, da-da-da-da. But ultimately, I was in a state of just like kind of feeling depleted, just like, I felt like a bit of a failure for a minute there because of the Cosm, and just like, did I just like let this baby just go? Did I just blow it? Like, what did I just do? You know, I just wasted a couple of my years of my life and the whole thing. I was feeling pretty down and out. So it was basically the mold poisoning plus being super stressed with a little bit of like probably midlife happening in there too. Yeah. Mix that in. Yeah. And it was a perfect environment for my body just to be like, you know, F you. So it was a pretty crazy time for me. So in that explosion of just everything, I started to just gravitate towards, well, I was in therapy, and you know, I've been doing traditional therapy for a while, and especially after my divorce and whatnot. And I felt myself always, I'd go into therapy and I'd feel pretty shitty going in, and I'd walk out feeling even more shitty. You know, like I don't know if it was my therapist, but I'd been through a few. You know what I mean? Like I had been through a few therapists. That's just how it is. They basically, you know, in my opinion, sort of like wrangle you in, and you can be in therapy for the rest of your life, right? So I started to just investigate a little bit into like different modalities and whatnot. And that's when I stumbled upon life coaching. And I just immersed myself with it. I couldn't stop. Like, it was just one of those things. I just like started to just read every book, listen to every podcast. It's just, you know how it is when you get into something, you just like can't stop. That's how it was for me. So yeah, that was for me was a perfect place for me to go based on what I had done previously in my career with Volcom, and then also Cosm, and just all the ups and downs of shit show that I kind of went through last year. And it's just been an incredible process to develop this practice. And so service for me, was the missing link. And it's funny because I think of it as a full circle, because the best times I had at Volcom, besides the filmmaking and camaraderie and whatnot, was team building. You know, through the athletes. You know, we were sponsoring the best athletes on the planet, you know, at the time, like Shaun White, Ryan Sheckler, you know, Bruce Irons, Terrier, I mean, you name it. It was like the hottest, most badass dudes. And my job was to sign them and integrate them in the brand, and also help them with their careers. Same thing with the employees. Like, I loved building teams, you know, and just working side by side with people and watching people develop and blossom into whatever it is they're going to do within Volcom or wherever they're going to go. Always open arms, hugs, love, you know, it was a lot of love. So this to me was a perfect segue, you know, just back to service and just really helping people see their inner awesomeness. And I mean, that's really where it spawned from. And I mean, called it Radical Voyage because we're all on a radical voyage. Like, that's basically what it is. This life is a radical voyage. It's going to be filled with ups, downs. You're going to get kicked in the head, kicked in the teeth. You're going to kill it. You're going to be high-fiving. You're going to be crying, all of it. So, you know, like, for me, this was a perfect calling, and I'm super happy. And I have just super small, few clients, just running it. And we talked about the other day, just as far as the athletes too, of just how, you know, there's that transition moment of there's really no place for athletes to get taken care of when it comes to when their careers are ending, right? Like, a lot of the time with Volcom, we took a lot of pride in really giving these guys, and we talked about this too, of giving them notice, you know, giving them like at least a year before your contract's over, you're going to be getting paid zero, like from maybe $200,000 a year to zero, okay? So in a year, so you better get your shit together. And that's kind of how it was on the brand side, and that's how it still is. So for athletes to have some sort of somebody or some entity that they can work with to transition, to find out what's going to make them tick and also bring in more finances that they need to live on for the rest of their life, or just for the next, whatever, 10 years, you know? And so yeah, I think that's a really cool thing. And all of a sudden, like, I've manifested a couple athletes, and it's been really cool talking with them in that transitional moment, and I can work with them and we co-create. So it's beautiful.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting that how you talk about Radical Voyage and, you know, being of service to people. And I found this myself too, in that I find so much more joy in being service to others and doing things like this Fireside Chat. You know, you get to a point where you've accumulated so much knowledge and experience and skills and everything that to keep it under, you know, your one roof, your brand, almost is a disservice of holding on to it. And, you know, you were already doing some of this radical voyage type coaching. I mean, it's like you're helping your athletes, you're building these teams. So you already kind of had practice with it. Now you're just like, you know, you're uncuffed from saying, okay, I'm not doing it for a brand. I can do it for myself on my terms with anybody that could use it. So you've kind of found your niche, it sounds like.
Yeah, no, I feel so passionate about it. It's like, it's the first thing in so long that I've actually like, you know, when I have a session with somebody, I feel so pumped. I'm just like, hell yeah, because I can see the change. I can watch the transformation happen when they have their insights and things like that. It's just, it's energizing, and it fuels me. I learn a lot, you know, so it's beautiful because it's just, it's real life stuff, you know, like this is the meat and potatoes. Like people just want to live better, do better, and just whatever it is, be healthier, make more money, you know, just all the different things that people are striving for in their lives. Yeah. So yeah, it's awesome.
Well, good for you, and thanks for, you know, sharing that knowledge and all those skills and experience and helping others. You know, I think that's something that you know, everybody's looking for, and not everybody gets to talk to guys like you. So I want to open it up to you guys. If anybody has questions out there, this is your chance to, you know, get some radical voyage insights.
Could be Volcom, whatever.
Yeah. Anybody want to start things off? Yeah.
Hello.
Anna, thanks for being here with us.
Of course.
One thing that, among the many, but I think the first question that struck me was you were talking about that transition when Volcom went through the IPO and having to both like appeal to essentially like the suits and the core.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that has like long been like a massive tension running through this industry. And you said there were some cool projects that you did. Are there any specifics that you could point to that helped you walk that line and kind of effectively do both?
Gosh, that's a good question. I think probably the bigger ones was we probably got couple key athletes, like higher paying athletes. I think a Warp Tour had been going, but we probably like upped that whole program. We had like the Volcom stage for the Warp Tour for many years, and just beefing up ad campaigns, really, just going much, much bigger. And
like across mainstream media, or just
you know, we kind of just got even more into the core a bit. It was funny because we took an opportunity to really reinvest back into the core as well, which, I mean, that's the foundation, is you want to make sure that foundation is solid as a rock. So that was definitely what we did. Was instead of 2 pages, we did 4, or like during those times, you know, it was like, man, the books were like 300 pages and people were doing like 8-page ads at the time in snowboarder and skateboarder and skateboarding and whatnot. So, but yeah, there was a lot of investment back into the court, and then a few, like I said, I think the X Games stuff was a few commercials that were high ticket items. But it was maybe like a Shaun White would have been like the mainstream play, you know, at that time. Yeah. Yeah,
you know, I worked with a couple of companies that were public, and you know, I think what happens as a marketing person, what happens is you start to kind of shift your thinking in that, you know, okay, is this cool? Great, box checked. But then you also got to look at it and say, what is this going to do to the bottom line? Are we going to move product? Is the number going to go up? Because I know that the higher ups who are looking at the sales and all that stuff, how do you think? And think about moving the needle and growing sales, because when you're public, you know, growth is mandatory. It's not an option. You know, profit is not an option. That's mandatory. So you kind of take on that extra effort to, you know, go back and say, okay, is this going to move the needle? And I remember with one of the companies that I worked with, we really stepped up our non-endemic marketing efforts. You know, so you have the endemic industry and everything, all the people that kind of know your brand already, and at some point you kind of hit you know, the point of diminishing returns. You know, if I run another ad, you know, it's like, am I really going to move the number up? If I put out another board short, are sales going to go through the roof or something like that? What I saw was, how do you take your marketing to that next circle of potential customers and bring them in? And you know, you got to get creative. You have to kind of walk that line of making sure that the core doesn't think you're selling out, and that you're not going too far where, you know, you lose your brand. Sometimes kind of hard to do, but that's the difficulty. When you go public, you got to play both sides of the fence, the core, and I think that's more important in our little industry. Everybody gets, scared. It's like, man, if I walk down the beach and everybody knows that I'm with Volcom, are they going to think I'm a sellout because I work for the brand? That's some part of it. Yeah, it's just that's there. Sean.
Piggyback, what Anna said, and what you guys were just talking about. Do you think it's possible, Troy, and this can translate to the other action sports, but I think it's even more prevalent in the surf industry. Is it possible for a core surf brand nowadays to grow in a meaningful way and maintain their core audience and at the same time expose themselves to a big audience? If so, and maybe this is for both of you on the second part, what are your secrets to doing that in a way that doesn't alienate your core audience while you grow?
So you're talking about just keeping it private? There's no IPO?
No, the above. How do you take the company from here to there without losing that core group? Is it possible?
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about, if it's a specific action sports type of brand has athletes, a lot of it for us is defined by our athlete roster. Like that was always the fuel. It was always back to the athletes because those are the guys that really were moving the needle for us. So it's absolutely possible. The times are different though now. It's a digital world now. And back then it was so analog, and it's almost, I don't know if it's a detriment or not, because back then there was no tangible results whatsoever except for the top line sales. But where did that sales come from? Was it because the design was awesome? Is it because we got Shaun White? Is it because that ad was cool? Like, you don't know, So now with the digital world, it's like, you're just, you know exactly where your dollars are coming from. Dollars. But it is possible, 100%.
I'll piggyback on that. I definitely think it's possible, and I'll point to something that I saw Volcom do really well, which was storytelling. Okay, and the way that they did that I thought they did it better than any other brand back then, was that they used media to their advantage. And you guys had this phenomenal relationship with Beach Happy,
Yeah.
And Beach Happy was like the local action sports rag. And as soon as it came into our store, it was gone. Everybody wanted it. And they would read page after page, and there were these really cool stories of new and fresh athletes that you wouldn't see in the big magazines or anything. And there would be these really cool stories of, surf trips and skate trips and snowboard trips. And it's like page after page, it was just like Volcom story. It was just really cool how you guys used that. But to your point, Sean, I think it's definitely possible. And I think there's brands that are doing that. I think they're realizing that they have to niche themselves. And, I would say one brand that I think I'm impressed with is Rourke. I think they do some really good stuff. And there's some other brands that are doing some really cool things too that are smaller, but they're niche focused. I like the Pura Vida guys, the Four Ocean guys, the Stance Socks guys. So I think now it's like finding your niche, tell your story, own your brand. And I think the other thing is, don't be afraid to go outside of the core. I think sometimes people, if they're not confident in their brand, they're not confident in their product, I think that's usually when they stumble and fall, because they're struggling to grow, but they need to grow outside of their circle, and they're like, gosh, are we doing it right? And they kind of, stumble here and there, but be confident. And I think that's where you guys did it. You guys were confident in your growth.
I think the mistake some brands have in that strategy of expanding out to maybe the mainstream or a little bit outside is they change their message. Maybe they try to be something that they're not. So really all you need to do is be who you are and kind of tell that story to that bigger audience. And if it resonates, great. If it doesn't, you still kind of got your core over here kind of ripping along. And cause for us, ultimately at the end of the day, the core was always the foundation. We got to grow sales and we got to do this, but if you don't have that core, it's just slowly going to erode. And then once the leaders that were buying the products go away, then what are you left with? Eventually, it's just going to go, it's going to take some time, but it's going to be a different playing field over time.
Yeah.
Just kind of adding to what everybody's saying on the topic of, how do you expand but keep your core? From a consumer's perspective, one of the things I saw Volcom do back in the day, earlier on, before anybody else really did it, was approach and take in bands and musicians and treat them like athletes.
Yeah.
I remember the guys from the line moved in next door to me, moved down from Big Bear. And, oh, you guys jamming? And like, we're on Volcom. I was like, what do you mean you're on Volcom?
Yeah.
Yeah, like, that's we're on that label now. We're on, Volcom. I was like, that makes sense.
Totally.
Musicians, athletes, and so you guys innovated in that aspect and broadened your market, but kept true to the tone.
Yeah.
And it's rare today to find brands that can do that. It's kind of like going back to every song has been played already. Every trick has been done already. But that was one thing that really stuck out to me when you guys were doing that.
Cool. Yeah. No, for sure. 100%. I mean, yeah, we had amazing relationships with all kinds of bands and Pennywise and obviously the line and we had our label for a while and we had the Warped Tour. I mean, that was huge for us. We started the Volcom stage and it was just like nothing. We literally went on the road with our like Winnebago and a 20 by 20 trailer and just like set up at every single Warped Tour. I think Ryan went to basically the entire summer, like, I don't even know, it was like 50 stops across the United States. It's just like incredible. So, but yeah, we blew that up into a big thing and we had all our bands and CKY. And so yeah, that's a good point for sure. And then on that topic, art was a big part of it as well. So having artists, Jamie Lynn's and Brian Iguchi when they were doing art and just the different artists from around the world and then we look at Ruka and what they've done with their artist advocate thing. They basically sort of kind of took what we started and just like did it bigger and better. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And but yeah, it's the sum of everything that you do, right? Like that was what Volcom, that was the magic of what we all did it was all the things, man. It's hard to put your one finger on it, just be like, this was what we did. These are the secrets. It's like, I can't do it, like truly.
Yeah, and look, to add on to that, I think looking at it from my perspective is that it went from like your standard product placement on a band that most brands were doing to building this relationship with bands that were delivering the soundtrack of this culture. That's the big thing. Like I look at Pennywise and it's like they helped raise me. I've listened to that music from day one and I've associated Pennywise with Volcom, and they were writing the soundtrack to all these kids' lives who wanted to surf and skate and snowboard and all that stuff. And it was just this really cool, like, I call it a generational shift. Everything shifted from like, people were like into surfing and then going to the Pennywise show at night, and then the next day they were gonna go skate with their friends and they were listening to Bad Religion, and then they were getting ready to go to the Warped Tour. It was really an exciting time. I mean, every summer it's like you're looking forward to the Warped Tour and the Pennywise tour, and Taylor Steele's new video coming out with the new Pennywise songs and everything. It was feeding our culture.
Yeah, just with all the kind of those, all few questions are kind of on the same lines of like, how do you keep your brand cool, this type of thing. Hire kids. They're in it, they're living it, because that's what we were. We were just kids living what we were doing. It was nothing more than that, truly. We would surf, we would skate, we would snowboard, we'd go to shows, we'd do stage dives, like whatever, we'd drink beer, all of it, party, the whole thing. We were living it. Hire kids.
Yeah, good point. I like that. Yeah.
Kind of on that note, do you have any advice or tips for people that are looking to break into the industry, marketing, creative side of things specifically, but just in general?
Just be relentless. Just like bug the shit out of them. Seriously. And I mean, not in a creepy way, but like, of course, like bug them, show them your resume, like whatever your specialties are. And then just, and offer your services without pay. Because everybody needs interns, and especially if you have something more, maybe you have some experience. I mean, if you can afford it, obviously, but like, that's where I think some good potential is for sure. And a lot of the people that we hired in the beginning were interns, and they became part of the brand for 10 plus years. And we'd hire people at low level to be working in the warehouse doing like pulling promo for team riders, and all of a sudden, see them doing a great job and just move up. Like we were We were always looking within. That was a big thing with Volcom, was looking within. But I would just be persistent, and yeah.
Cool. We'll take one more question. Yeah.
Two things. First,
Yeah.
during the talk, et cetera, as always, I met some pretty amazing people. But there was one gal that kind of stood out because it was kind of cool. Is she left New York and moved to California today, didn't even unpack. She wants to get into action sports. And I thought, how cool would it be if two stalwarts in the industry were to give her a California welcome and give her that type of thing. The second part of the unrelated question is, what's your big dream?
My big dream?
Yes.
My big dream. Wow, that's big.
World peace.
Oh, gosh. Just people being fulfilled and happy, like, in what they do and whatever.
What's your big dream?
Oh, my big dream. Be fulfilled and happy. Like, period. I couldn't think of anything more simple yet profound, like truly. Like, I just want to be fulfilled and have in my purpose. No? Unknown, dude. Bring it on. I mean, it's funny, the whole, been just learning a lot about even just creating out the unknown, because we're all a lot of the time just working off our old patterns and habits and just programs and things. And I mean, there's a lot of beauty for the unknown. It's where shit happens. It's where shit develops, is in the unknown. You just gotta kind of recognize that, I think, and be open to it and be like, okay, this is an unknown territory. It's a little uncomfortable, but this is where the shit happens. So I don't know, that probably doesn't answer your question, but.
I think it's a good place to start winding things down. I got the last question. Troy's going to get the last say. So, unfiltered, Troy, okay? What's your take on what's going on in the industry as a whole? What do you think? Any advice you want to dole out to brands and retailers out there? You don't work for any of these guys, so you can say whatever you want. I want to hear it. Right?
I think we could liven it up a bit more. It feels, there's a few brands doing some cool things, but it feels a little stale, in my opinion. And I think people need to just go outside the box and experiment. Like, that was all we were doing back in the day. It was one big experiment, straight up. So I think that I think people need to experiment more, because it feels a little stale, in my humble opinion.
I think
what about you?
I think it's a strong. Hey, I would concur that I think there's a lot of homogenization, sameness. I think you can take the logos of the brands and swap them with any product or athlete.
Especially product.
And I think it's hard to stand out in that. I think I'd like to see brands take on more purpose, as opposed to just like, how many board shorts are we going to sell this season, as opposed to like, hey, how many lives are we going to change, and how are we going to become a brand with purpose? And I always look at it like there's, brands always try and find this like spiritual mission statement that goes, we're the only ones with this mission statement, and we came up with this. And I say, don't waste your time with mission statements and value statements and vision statements and all that stuff. There's one thing, there's one statement, and I've always lived off of it. Improve the quality of life of everybody around you. And if you focus on that, everything will fall in line. And it's like, it's like as a surfer, if the brands, work to give me the best surf experience ever, anything, it's like that would be an improvement to the quality of my life. And I think every brand can do that. It's like, stop trying to compete. There's a lot of homogenization out there. An extra board short, an extra t-shirt isn't going to move the needle. I think the pie is, getting crowded. I don't necessarily think it's growing. I just think that there's, more people taking a bite out of the pie, so it gets a little bit difficult. It's getting competitive, but a little bit more purpose behind the brands, less homogenization.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So,
awesome.
Cool. Dude, the wonderful Troy Eckert. Thank you so much, dude. So good.
Love you. Thank you, brother.
Okay. So stick around if you like. I know it's a Thursday night. Some of you have families, so if you need to get to them, please do so. If you want to stick around, I know Troy's going to hang out too. Hammer him, maybe join him on his radical voyage. So thank you all for coming out. We'll be back next month again.
Thank you. Thank you.